The scalding coffee hit my skin at exactly 10:17 a.m. on Tuesday. The ceramic mug shattered against the conference table next, sending shards skittering across my presentation materials. My light blue shirt clung to my chest, steam rising as 23 pairs of stunned eyes locked onto me. "You manipulative witch!" she screamed, standing over me with rage contorting her features. I'd never met Iris before, but I instantly knew who she was. Her wedding ring matched the one on my boss Leo's finger, and her designer outfit screamed executive spouse at the company's quarterly review I'd been leading. "This is what happens when you try to make my husband look incompetent." Iris grabbed my water glass next, but Leo lunged forward, catching her wrist. "Stop it! What are you doing here?" he hissed, face ashen as board members and senior staff froze in shocked silence. I remained seated, despite the burning sensation spreading across my chest and stomach. With deliberate calm, I reached for the conference phone, pressed the security extension, and said, "This is Penny Wilson. We need assistance in the main conference room immediately." I disconnected and looked directly at Leo, whose expression had transformed from shock to something darker, fear. "Someday," I said softly, holding his gaze, "you'll thank me for this." The color drained from his face. He knew exactly what I meant. As security arrived to escort the still screaming Iris from the room, I dabbed ineffectually at my soaked clothing with napkins from the refreshment table. Company President Vince Temple recovered first, clearing his throat. "I think we should take 15 minutes, he announced. "Penny, there's a company store on the first floor if you need. I keep spare clothes in my office," I responded, rising from my chair with as much dignity as possible. "I'll be back to finish my presentation." Only when I reached the hallway did I allow myself a slight tremble in my hands. The elevator ride to my floor was mercifully empty. Inside my office, I locked the door and peeled off the coffee-soaked shirt, wincing at the angry red skin beneath. My emergency outfit, a simple black dress kept for unexpected client meetings, would have to do. As I changed, I caught my reflection in the small mirror on my wall. My face appeared calm, but my eyes told a different story. This public humiliation was just the latest chapter in an orchestrated campaign to break me. The coffee attack wasn't random. Iris had chosen today because she knew what was in my presentation. Leo had told her what I'd discovered, but they didn't know everything I knew. I returned to the conference room exactly 12 minutes later. The whispers stopped as I entered. My slides were still projected on the screen, paused at the budget analysis section that had triggered Iris's outburst. "I apologize for the interruption," I said, taking my position at the head of the table. Leo sat with his shoulders hunched, phone clutched in his hand. "As I was saying before the incident, our division has exceeded quarterly targets by 17%, despite significant resource allocation challenges." I clicked to the next slide, the one Iris had tried to prevent me from showing. This chart represents budget distribution across all projects under our division. As you can see, there's a recurring expense category labeled Strategic Consulting that accounts for nearly 30% of our total budget. Leo's knuckles whitened around his phone. "When investigating this expense," I continued, "I was unable to find corresponding deliverables or even basic vendor information. President Temple, since you authorized our budget initially, I wanted to ask if you received any reports from this consultant." All eyes turned to Vince, whose brow furrowed. "I don't recall approving any external consultants for your division," he said. The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. "That's because it was classified," Leo interjected, his voice steadier than his complexion suggested. "Special project. Need, to, no basis." "Then perhaps you could enlighten us now," I suggested, "since it's consuming nearly a third of our resources." Leo glanced at his phone, then toward the door. "I think, after what just happened, we should postpone this portion. My wife is clearly unwell, and I need to." "Your wife seemed very concerned that I was making you look incompetent," I interrupted. "But these numbers speak for themselves. Either explain this expense or I'll need to recommend a formal audit. If you're finding this story of workplace betrayal intriguing, please hit like and subscribe for more unbelievable true accounts of professional revenge. Trust me, what happens next in this boardroom will leave you speechless. My name is Penny Wilson. Until 3 months ago, I was just another team manager at Dynamic Developments. I grew up in a small town in Michigan, raised by a single mother who taught high school math and coached volleyball on weekends for extra money. We weren't poor, but every dollar mattered. Mom instilled 2 principles in me: honesty and persistence. Truth eventually surfaces, she'd say, if someone cares enough to keep digging. I carried those values into my career. After college, I worked my way up from entry level to managing a team of 14 talented people. When I earned my promotion to division lead, Leo had been my biggest supporter. He'd mentored me, invited me to strategy sessions, even introduced me to clients as the future of this company. Everything changed when President Temple started noticing my work. First, it was small comments. Excellent analysis, Penny, or that approach might work company-wide. Then came an invitation to present directly to the board without Leo. That's when his attitude transformed. Morning meetings became interrogations. Why haven't you completed the Thompson proposal? He'd demand. Though we'd agreed it wasn't due for weeks, projects would mysteriously disappear from shared drives. Team members reported receiving conflicting instructions from him, contradicting my directives. I tried addressing it directly. Is everything okay between us? I asked during a private lunch. Of course, he'd replied with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Just keeping you on your toes. That's what a good mentor does. 2 weeks later, I overheard him telling another manager, Penny's technically skilled, but lacks vision. Classic middle management material at best. The systematic undermining continued for months. Then came the budget discrepancies. Small at first, expenses that didn't quite match our actuals, resources allocated, then suddenly unavailable. When I inquired, Leo dismissed my concerns. Accounting errors, he'd say. I'll handle it. I might have let it go if not for Denise, our division accountant. She stopped by my office late one evening, closing the door behind her. Something weird is happening with our numbers, she whispered, sliding a folder across my desk. I'm supposed to process these payments to a consulting group I've never heard of. No contract, no deliverables. Just a monthly invoice, Leo approves. The folder contained payment records totaling over $600,000 in the past year. Have you asked him about it? I questioned. Denise bit her lip. Last time I questioned an expense, I was removed from 2 accounts. I need this job, Penny. My daughter starts college next year. I promised to handle it discreetly. That night, I stayed late, digging through financial records. The consulting company, Griffin Strategy Associates, had no website, no business registration I could find, and no employees on professional networks. Just a P.O. box address and a bank account number. The quarterly review was my opportunity to bring these discrepancies to light. I prepared meticulously, gathering evidence, building a presentation that highlighted our team's successes while revealing the mysterious budget drain. The morning of the presentation, Leo appeared unusually calm. Big day, he remarked, leaning against my office doorway. You ready? Absolutely, I replied, not mentioning the financial slides. Good, he nodded. Just remember, some things look suspicious without proper context. Always best to discuss concerns privately before going public. It was a warning. He knew what I'd found. As I entered the conference room that morning, I noticed Leo texting frantically. Now I understood who was on the receiving end of those messages. The board members listened attentively as I detailed our division's achievements. When I reached the financial section, Leo had tried interrupting several times before Iris burst in with her coffee assault. Now, standing in my backup black dress, I watched Leo squirm as President Temple demanded answers about the mysterious consulting expenses. It's a specialized market research initiative, Leo claimed, exploring potential expansion opportunities. Without deliverables? I questioned. The research is ongoing, he insisted. These investigations take time. Strange that a company with no website or employees would be conducting such valuable research, I remarked. President Temple's expression hardened. Leo, I want documentation for this consultant on my desk by end of day. Every invoice, every report, every email. Leo nodded stiffly. Of course. There's just been a misunderstanding. And an assault, added Temple, which we'll address separately. Penny, please continue your presentation. I completed my slides, aware of Leo's growing agitation. When the meeting adjourned, he cornered me by the elevator. You have no idea what you've done, he growled, close enough that only I could hear. This isn't about money. There are things you don't understand. Enlighten me then, I challenged. Not everything is black and white, Penny. Sometimes good people make desperate choices. His expression softened momentarily. If you knew the whole story. The elevator arrived and I stepped inside. Then tell me the whole story. It's too late for that now, he responded, his voice hollow as the doors closed between us. That evening, my cell phone rang with an unfamiliar number. Is this Penny Wilson? A female voice asked, tight with emotion. Yes, who's calling? This is Iris. We need to talk. Meet me at Crestview Park in 1 hour. Iris continued, her voice unsteady. Come alone. I should have refused. Meeting my boss's wife after she'd assaulted me was objectively unwise. Yet curiosity overrode caution. The park was nearly empty at dusk, just a few joggers circling the path. Iris sat on a bench overlooking the pond, sunglasses hiding her eyes despite the fading light. Her hands trembled slightly as she clutched an expensive purse. Thank you for coming, she said as I approached, her voice lacking the fury from earlier. I owe you an apology. I remained standing, maintaining distance. An apology would be appropriate. The coffee, it was inexcusable. She removed her sunglasses, revealing reddened eyes. I'm not typically violent, yet you felt compelled to assault me during a business meeting. Iris glanced around nervously. Leo told me you were trying to destroy him, that you discovered his arrangement, and planned to expose him publicly instead of discussing it privately. The arrangement being hundreds of thousands in company funds diverted to a fake consulting firm? She flinched. It's not what you think. Then what is it? Iris stared at the pond for a long moment. Our son, Julian, he has problems. Addiction issues that spiraled out of control. He needed specialized treatment. Our insurance wouldn't cover it, and the cost was astronomical. I processed this information cautiously. So Leo stole company money for medical treatment? It started that way, she admitted. Julian was in trouble with dangerous people. Gambling debts. They threatened him, threatened us. Leo thought it would be a one-time thing, just enough to get Julian into rehab and pay off what he owed. But it continued for over a year, I noted. Her shoulders sagged. Julian relapsed, multiple times. Each time, the costs grew. And Leo, he got comfortable with the arrangement, started using the money for other things. Our vacation home, my shopping. He said he deserved it, after all his contributions to the company. The pieces were aligning, but something felt off. Why are you telling me this? Because I need your help, she whispered. Julian doesn't know his father stole for him. If this becomes public, it will destroy him. He's 6 months sober now. Please, we can make this right. How exactly? Leo can replace the money. We'll sell the vacation property. I have jewelry, investments. Give us time to fix this quietly. I studied her pleading expression. Where is Julian now? At our home. He moved back in after his last treatment. I'd like to meet him, I said. Alarm flashed across her face. Why? Because I need to understand what I'm potentially protecting. She hesitated, then nodded. Tomorrow evening. Come to our house at 7. As I turned to leave, Iris called after me. Penny, Leo isn't a bad person. He just made mistakes trying to protect his family. I paused. Good people can do terrible things, Iris. That doesn't make the things less terrible. The next morning, I arrived at work to find Leo waiting by my office. His usual confident demeanor had crumbled, replaced by a haggard, sleepless look. Iris told me you're coming over tonight, he said, following me inside. That's right. Before you do, I want to explain the situation more clearly. He closed my door. Yes, I diverted company funds. Yes, it was wrong. But my son needed treatment for addiction issues and was in danger from gambling debts. I finished. Iris covered that part. Then you understand why I did it? I understand your justification. That doesn't make embezzlement acceptable. Leo's expression hardened. Easy moral judgment from someone who's never faced impossible choices. If it were your child, don't, I interrupted. Don't attempt to normalize theft by appealing to my emotions. What do you want, Penny? Money? Promotion? Name it. I regarded him coolly. I want to meet Julian. Then I'll decide what happens next. Leo ran his hand through his disheveled hair. Fine. 7 o'clock. But understand something. I will protect my family at any cost. The threat hung between us as he left. Throughout the day, I received numerous texts from unknown numbers. Back off if you know what's good for you. Some secrets should stay buried. Everyone has skeletons. We'll find yours. By afternoon, President Temple summoned me to his office. Penny, I received concerning information about you today, he began, his expression grave. Anonymous allegations of falsified reports and personal vendettas. Let me guess, they claim I'm targeting Leo out of professional jealousy? Temple studied me. Something like that. They also provided documents suggesting you approved the consulting arrangement last year. My stomach tightened. Those would be forgeries. I assumed as much, but this is becoming messy. Leo has requested administrative leave pending an internal investigation into you. He's attempting to discredit me before the truth emerges. Perhaps, Temple acknowledged, or perhaps there's more to this situation. Either way, tread carefully. Allegations like these can destroy careers, regardless of truth. That evening, I drove to the address Iris had provided, an imposing house in an exclusive neighborhood. Security cameras tracked my approach to the front door, which opened before I could knock. A young man in his mid-20s stood in the doorway. He had Leo's jawline but Iris's intense eyes, thin but handsome, with the restless energy of someone uncomfortable in stillness. "You must be Penny," he said. "I'm Julian. Mom said you're the one trying to send Dad to prison." "That's not quite accurate," I replied. He shrugged. "Whatever. Come in." They're waiting in the living room. The interior showcased wealth, artwork, designer furniture, and a wall of family photographs displaying their perfect life. Julian in graduation robes, Julian on ski slopes, Julian between proud parents at various life milestones. Leo and Iris sat tensely on a sofa, watching as I entered. "Thank you for coming," Iris said formally. "Would you like something to drink?" "No, thank you." I took a seat facing the family. "I appreciate you allowing this meeting." Julian dropped into an armchair, leg bouncing nervously. "So let's cut to it. My parents say you discovered Dad's creative accounting and now hold our future in your hands." "Julian," Leo warned. "What? That's what this is, right? She knows Dad siphoned company money, supposedly for my rehab." Julian's bitter laugh surprised me, the great irony being that I never went to the treatment center they claim. Iris gasped. Leo's face paled. "What are you talking about?" Iris demanded. "We spent hundreds of thousands on your recovery." Julian's eyes narrowed. "You spent money, sure, but not on the place you told everyone. That Swiss clinic you bragged about to your friends? I was in a state-funded program in New Jersey. Cost about 40 grand total for 3 stays. If you're riveted by this family's web of lies, make sure to like and subscribe for the most shocking stories of betrayal and revenge you'll ever hear." "That's not possible," Leo insisted. "I paid the invoices myself." "To whom exactly?" Julian asked. "Because it wasn't Wellspring Recovery where I actually stayed." The room fell silent as Leo and Iris exchanged panicked glances. "You're confused," Iris finally said. "The medications—" "Stop lying," Julian shouted, suddenly standing. "I've been clean 6 months. Brain's working fine now. You two used my addiction as cover for your lifestyle. The vacation house? The boat? Mom's shopping sprees? All supposedly for poor, sick Julian. I watched as their family facade crumbled in real time. We were trying to protect you," Leo attempted. "By stealing?" Julian laughed bitterly. "How's that working out?" I cleared my throat. "Julian, you mentioned state-funded treatment. Do you have documentation of your stays?" He studied me, then nodded. "Bills, discharge papers, everything." "Why?" "Because your parents told a very different story about where the money went." Leo stood abruptly. "This meeting is over. Penny, we'll continue this discussion privately." "Sit down, Leo," I said quietly. "There's more to discuss." Something in my tone made him comply. "How did you know?" Julian asked me. "About the money? Budget discrepancies, unusual payment patterns. But I didn't know about you until yesterday when your mother approached me with your supposed medical emergencies." Julian turned to his parents. "You're still using me as your excuse? After everything?" "We were desperate," Iris whispered. "For what, more stuff? Bigger house? What was worth risking prison?" Leo's composure finally broke. "It started for you. Yes, we continued after your treatment, but the initial emergency was real. Those gambling debts—" "What gambling debts?" Julian interrupted, confusion crossing his face. Another silence fell over the room. "The ones you called about," Iris said cautiously. 2 years ago, you said men were threatening you over unpaid gambling debts." Julian shook his head slowly. "I never gambled, never called about debts. My rock bottom was passing out at a friend's wedding and waking up in the hospital." I watched Leo's face transition from confusion to horrified realization. "The call," he muttered. "It wasn't Julian." Iris clutched her chest, but they knew things about him. Personal details. "Mom, my entire life is on social media thanks to your oversharing," Julian said. "Anyone could learn enough to impersonate me." "Then who called demanding money?" Leo asked. I decided to interrupt. "I think the better question is, who knew enough about your finances to target you specifically? Who knew you had access to company funds that could be diverted without immediate detection?" Leo's eyes widened. "You think we were scammed?" I think someone manipulated you into stealing by using your son as emotional leverage, I replied. But that doesn't explain why you continued long after Julian's treatment ended. We had established the consulting arrangement, Leo said defensively. It seemed wasteful not to use it. Julian stood again. I need air. This is too much. He walked out, leaving an uncomfortable silence. What happens now? Iris finally asked. I leaned forward. Now we determine whether there's a path forward that serves justice without destroying innocent lives. You'd help us? Leo asked incredulously. I haven't decided yet, I replied honestly. But first, I need the complete truth. No more lies. Leo nodded, defeated. Where do you want us to start? With Griffin Strategy Associates. Who controls it? I do, he admitted. I created it specifically for this purpose. And the P.O. box, the bank account? All mine. Iris didn't know the details until recently. I processed this information. Tomorrow morning, I'll need all records related to this arrangement. Every transaction, every communication about Julian's supposed gambling debts. Everything. And then? Iris asked. Then I'll make my decision. As I stood to leave, Julian returned, his expression calmer but resolved. Whatever you decide, he told me. I want no part in covering this up. I've spent years taking responsibility for my mistakes. It's their turn now. Driving home, my phone rang. Unknown number. Hello, Miss Wilson. A male voice I didn't recognize. I understand you've been asking questions about Griffin Strategy Associates. My grip tightened on the steering wheel. Who is this? Someone with a vested interest in how this situation resolves. Leo Griffin isn't the mastermind you imagine. He's a pawn in a larger game. What game? One you've stumbled into blindly. Back away now, while you still can. The call disconnected, leaving me with a growing sense that whatever I'd uncovered went far beyond one family's deception. The next morning, an envelope waited on my desk. No name, no postmark. Inside was a single photograph. Leo shaking hands with a man whose face I recognized immediately. Reed Taylor, notorious for corporate fraud schemes that had ruined 3 companies before disappearing overseas. Scrawled across the bottom, deeper than you know, walk away. I locked the photo in my desk drawer and checked my email. Leo had sent the promised documentation, transaction records, bank statements, and a folder labeled Julian's Situation. The financial records confirmed what I already knew. Systematic embezzlement disguised as consulting fees. But the emails in Julian's folder revealed something more disturbing. The supposed gambling debt communications came from an encrypted email address. The sender demonstrated intimate knowledge of company operations, mentioning specific projects and timelines only insiders would know. This wasn't a random scam. Someone had deliberately targeted Leo using inside information. As I scrolled through the emails, a meeting notification popped up on my screen. Emergency board session. 2 p.m. Confidential. No agenda. No explanation. My phone buzzed with a text from Denise, our accountant. They're saying you falsified reports. Temple looking for you. I checked the time. 10:17 a.m. Exactly 24 hours since Iris had thrown coffee at me. The symmetry wasn't lost on me. Before I could respond, my office door opened. President Temple entered with the head of security. Penny, Temple said gravely. I need to ask you to surrender your company devices and access badge. On what grounds? I asked, though I already knew. Tampering with financial records, falsifying reports, and corporate espionage. His expression conveyed regret rather than anger. Leo provided evidence that you've been altering documents to frame him for discrepancies you created. That's absurd, perhaps, but the board takes such allegations seriously. You're suspended pending investigation. The security head stepped forward. We'll need your laptop, phone, and badge. I handed over my company phone and badge but gestured to my laptop. I need to log out properly. There's confidential client information open. Temple nodded reluctantly. Make it quick. As they waited, I closed several windows before sending a single email to my personal account. Subject line, insurance. Attached were copies of the original financial records I'd downloaded weeks ago, before Leo could alter them. All done, I said, passing over the laptop. Temple sighed. For what it's worth, I hope this is a misunderstanding. It's not a misunderstanding, I replied calmly. It's a cover-up. The security head escorted me to my car. As I drove away, my personal phone rang with Julian's number. They just suspended me, I said before he could speak. I know, he replied, his voice tight. Dad's telling everyone you doctored the records. He had Mom back up his story about my treatment costs. Did she agree? Reluctantly, she's scared. He paused. But I'm not backing their lies. I've got my actual treatment records. And something else you should see. We arranged to meet at a diner across town. Julian arrived looking harried, a manila folder clutched in his hand. I went through their home office last night after you left, he explained, sliding into the booth. Found these in Dad's desk safe. The folder contained partnership agreements between Leo and Reed Taylor, dating back 3 years. They outlined a sophisticated scheme. Reed would provide access to offshore accounts where embezzled funds could be hidden. Leo would supply insider information about the company for Reed's investment strategies. There was never any scammer threatening me, Julian said bitterly. Dad and this Reed guy cooked up that story as cover. They needed a sympathetic reason for the initial thefts. They used your addiction as misdirection, I confirmed. But why involve your mother in the lie? Because Mom would never have agreed to outright theft. But for me? He shook his head. She'd rationalize anything if it was supposedly for my benefit. I studied the documents. These prove conspiracy, but they don't explain how Leo falsified records to frame me. Maybe this helps. Julian pulled out a USB drive. Dad's backup files. He doesn't know I found his password. At my apartment, we examined the drive's contents. Among folders of family photos and tax documents was one labeled Contingency. Inside were digitally altered versions of the financial reports I'd prepared, modified to make it appear I had created the fake consulting arrangement. He planned this from the beginning, I realized. Insurance, in case someone discovered what he was doing. Classic Dad, Julian muttered, always thinking 3 steps ahead. My phone buzzed with an unknown number. The same male voice from last night spoke. Miss Wilson, I understand you've been suspended. Who is this? I demanded. Someone with similar interests. Check your email. The line disconnected. My inbox contained a message from an anonymous address with an audio file attached. The recording was a conversation between Leo and Reed Taylor, discussing how to handle the penny problem. She knows too much, Leo's voice said. The suspension buys us time, but we need more permanent solutions. Remember our agreement, Reed replied. No unnecessary complications. She's already a complication. If she connects us, everything falls apart. The recording ended there. Julian stared at me, face pale. What does permanent solutions mean? He asked. Nothing good, I replied, thinking quickly. Julian, I need you to go somewhere safe. A friend's house, a hotel, somewhere your parents won't look. What about you? I'm going to finish what I started. After Julian left, I assembled everything I'd gathered. The original financial records, Leo's partnership agreements with Reed, the altered documents meant to frame me, and the recorded conversation. I created multiple digital copies, storing them in secure locations. Then I called President Temple's private number. Penny, he answered cautiously. I can't discuss your situation until the investigation. I'm not calling about my suspension, I interrupted. I'm calling about the emergency board meeting at 2. A pause. How did you know about that? Because Leo scheduled it to officially present his case against me. But before that happens, you need to see what I've found. Temple hesitated. This isn't appropriate. Neither is conspiracy, fraud, and embezzlement involving external criminal organizations. I have proof, not just of Leo's theft, but of who he's working with. Another pause. 30 minutes. My office at the West Side Athletic Club. Come through the service entrance. I grabbed my evidence and headed out, constantly checking my mirrors for followers. The athletic club was nearly empty mid-morning. Temple waited in a private meeting room, expression guarded. This better be substantial, he warned as I unpacked my documents. For the next 20 minutes, I laid out the evidence methodically. The financial discrepancies, Julian's actual treatment records versus the claimed expenses, the partnership with Reed Taylor, and finally, the recording discussing permanent solutions. Temple's expression grew progressively grimmer. When I finished, he sat silently for a long moment. If this is authentic, he finally said, it's beyond internal discipline. This is criminal. It's authentic, I confirmed. Julian is willing to testify about his parents' fabrications regarding his treatment. Temple pinched the bridge of his nose. The board meeting. Is Leo's attempt to bury this permanently by destroying my credibility? He nodded slowly. What do you propose? Let the meeting proceed as planned. Don't warn Leo. Just make one change to the attendee list. At 1:55 p.m., I waited in Temple's office, out of sight from the boardroom. Through the partially open door, I watched board members arrive, followed by Leo and Iris. They entered confidently, Leo carrying a presentation folder, Iris beside him, in a show of spousal solidarity. At precisely 2 p.m., Temple called the meeting to order. I couldn't see the room from my position, but the audio feed played clearly through Temple's computer. Before we begin, Temple announced, "I want to introduce someone with relevant information to the allegations against Penny Wilson. Please welcome Special Agent Miranda Cole from the Financial Crimes Division." The stunned silence was audible even through the speaker. "What is this?" Leo demanded. "We're here to discuss internal misconduct, not—" "Actually, Mr. Griffin," a new female voice interrupted. "We're here because evidence of wire fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy has been brought to our attention." "This is outrageous," Iris protested. "We came here about Penny Wilson's falsification of company records." "Those records weren't falsified," Temple replied calmly. "At least, not by Penny." The boardroom door opened, and Julian walked in. "Julian?" Iris gasped. "What are you doing here?" "Telling the truth, Mom," he responded, his voice carrying clearly through the audio feed. "About my actual treatment, about Dad's partnership with Reed Taylor, about all of it." The moment had arrived, my careful plan unfolding exactly as designed. When I discovered Leo's embezzlement 2 months ago, I hadn't confronted him immediately. Instead, I'd contacted an old college friend who now worked in financial crimes. Together, we'd built a case methodically, gathering evidence while I continued working normally. Iris's coffee attack had accelerated our timeline, but the trap had already been set. The anonymous emails and calls were from investigators monitoring Leo's communications with Reed. My suspension was staged to make Leo believe he'd successfully discredited me, encouraging him to proceed with the board meeting where he planned to destroy my reputation completely. The meeting continued, as Agent Cole detailed the investigation into Leo and Reed's partnership. Board members asked shocked questions. Iris sobbed. Leo grew increasingly desperate, finally shouting accusations about my personal vendetta against him. "This is about her mother," he yelled. "Tell them, Penny. Tell them why you've been targeting me." I took that as my cue and entered the boardroom. All eyes turned to me. "You're right, Leo," I said quietly. "This is partly about my mother." "See?" He turned triumphantly to the board. "Personal revenge. My mother worked at Meridian Financial 15 years ago," I continued calmly. "She noticed accounting discrepancies and reported them to her supervisor, Reed Taylor." Leo's triumphant expression collapsed. "Reed buried her reports, then systematically discredited her until she was fired. She never worked in finance again." I turned to Agent Cole. "When I discovered Leo's connection to Reed, everything clicked. Same methods, different company." "You set me up," Leo whispered. "No," I corrected. "I just created an environment where your true character could reveal itself. The embezzlement, the framing, the lies, those were all your choices." Temple stood. "I think we've heard enough. The board will cooperate fully with the investigation. Leo, Iris, please surrender your access badges to security." As they were escorted out, Leo paused beside me. "You planned this from the beginning, even the coffee incident." "The coffee was your wife's inspiration," I replied. "But everything else?" "Yes. From the moment I saw Reed Taylor's name in your emails, this was inevitable. Why not just report me immediately?" I smiled slightly. "Because my mother taught me something important. It's not enough to expose a thief. You have to ensure they can never steal again." 3 weeks later, the company announced a complete restructuring of the financial oversight system. Leo and Reed faced multiple federal charges. Iris, granted immunity for her testimony, filed for divorce. Julian entered a recovery support program, determined to rebuild his life honestly. As for me, I was appointed interim division head, with a board seat pending. The day of the announcement, Julian stopped by my office. "I still can't believe you orchestrated all this," he said, shaking his head in admiration. "Not orchestrated," I corrected. "I just created the conditions for truth to emerge. The rest was inevitable." He studied me curiously. "Was getting justice for your mother worth all this?" I considered the question. "This wasn't about revenge, Julian. It was about protection, ensuring